Okay, so hello and welcome to Itentive Healthcare Solutions webinar. Today we'll be presenting on iCare ServerHealth. This is the first webinar in our three-part series, Improving NextGen Efficiencies with Itentive Products and Services. My name's Chelsea Grover and I'm the Marketing Communications Coordinator for Itentive. I'd like to take a moment to explain the process for today's presentation. First, I'd like to mention that this webinar will be recorded. Next, for those of you who aren't familiar with Itentive, I wanted to share a bit of who we are with you. We've been in business as Itentive since 2003, but we were NextGen users since 1997 EPM version 2.3. We specialize specifically in NextGen Healthcare. Our development team knows how to get data into, out of, and around NextGen to customize it and tailor it to meet our clients' unique needs. Our purpose in life is to create delighted clients by helping them get the absolute most out of their NextGen software investment. It is our passion to provide solutions for our healthcare provider partners, which in turn help them to improve patient care, enhance the patient experience, and maintain a financially healthy practice. We really do everything NextGen, from consulting to hosting to customization to support, and we have two NextGen productivity add-on solutions, ChartGuard and Refund Manager. We're here to help. Next, I wanted to bring your attention to the next webinar in our three-part series, Patient Portal and Auto Enrollment. In it, we'll introduce a software solution we created to assist clients in automatically enrolling patients in NextGen's Patient Portal. Check it out to learn how auto enrollment can help your practice be more efficient in managing patient information. Okay, so going back to iCare ServerHealth. At the end of the presentation, we're going to open the floor up to questions from you. We will answer all the questions at the end, but you may type them in the questions area of the webinar control panel whenever they occur to you. And for your reference, we'll also be emailing out links to the recordings and PDF of the slides of the presentation later this week, as we do with every webinar. Finally, for audio clarity purposes, everyone's phone will remain muted throughout the entire webinar. If you experience audio issues, please use the chat box to let us know so we can resolve them. So without further delay, I'd like to introduce our presenters for today, Keith Justice and, of course, me. Keith has been with Itentive for the last 4 years as our Director of Business Development. Before that, he was VP of Consulting Services at an IT company that specialized in healthcare, so he's been in the industry for quite a while now. Many of you have probably met Keith at different NextGen events throughout the years. As I said earlier, I'm Chelsea Grover. I'm Itentive's Marketing Communications Coordinator. I've been with Itentive for just over 4 years. I used to work on the consulting team here, and I've also had the privilege of meeting many of you, and you'll probably recognize my name from all of our webinar invites, blog updates, and if you interact with us on social media, that's me. Okay, so Keith, I'm going to go ahead and pass the webinar off to you. Feel free to get started when you're ready.
Okay, thanks, Chelsea. I appreciate the introduction there. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day to join us for our webinar on improving NextGen efficiencies with Itentive Products and Services. Today, we're specifically going to be focusing on iCare ServerHealth. So often we have heard clients coming to us saying, hey, they're experiencing OLDP congestion, issues with the BBP communication services, or that they just don't feel comfortable with their current server monitoring functions. And we at Itentive can help. In this webinar, we will introduce how we can help with a solution called iCare ServerHealth. Together, we'll look at the value of this solution can bring to your practice with real-time alerts and proactively dealing with issues so our clients feel no negative impact. So let's go through real quickly just kind of the agenda of what we're going to cover here. So for this webinar, we'll talk a little bit about what is iCare ServerHealth, why we built this solution, how it works from the monitoring aspect, the advanced monitoring, alerting, remediation, and prevention. And we're actually going to walk you through some of the scripts that we've written and what's the elements that we're looking for and the metrics that we use, and then why we do that, why it's important to your practice, that you should be looking at these if you're not already. We'll go through some customization options, and then why practices choose to use Itentive's solution versus taking the time to develop their own, and then what is your next step? And then at the end we'll have questions, just like I mentioned. Okay, so iCare ServerHealth. What is this thing? It is a unique monitoring, alerting, and remediation service crafted specifically to ensure the availability and performance of your NextGen healthcare environment. So why we built this solution is we needed a solution for our hosted clients that understood more than basics Windows and hardware monitoring. It needed to understand NextGen. We need to make sure that we understand what's going on under the blankets with NextGen, not just from the Windows perspective. We wanted actionable alerts that mirrored performance or availability issues that impact end users of practice management and EHR. We wanted to economize labor by automating some of the remediation where possible, and we wanted to resolve issues before they impacted our users, as I'm sure you guys do as well. So does any of this sound familiar to you guys? You know, your online document processor is not processing. Your communication services aren't communicating. Your health quality measure is not measuring. Your report server is either not reporting or it's outdated and doesn't have the current information. Or your background business processor is not backgrounding. It's not summarizing, creating the documents for your physicians in a timely manner, or maybe it's just not functioning at all, and so therefore we're affecting their workflow. Or your SQL server is not responding or not serving up what it's supposed to be doing or having errors, or the big one, performance issues. I'm sure we've all heard those before. So here's how it works. We install a non-invasive agents on your servers. We use LabTech as our software product that we use. Maybe you're familiar with it. It is one of the top industry standards. I think it's changed ownership a few times, but for the most part, it is a industry top 5 solution. These agents look at the server OS level, so it looks at performance counters, the services on the servers, different various queues. It also looks at the SQL server from performance counters as well there, and specific SQL functions. Then we've written and customized SQL scripts. We use PowerShell to do that, and we've written specific stuff for NextGen functions, which is where we hope you'll see the value mostly in this environment. And then we've written some custom application server scripts specific to NextGen functions. And then these alerts are all triggered communications or they trigger communications or optional remediation. And I'll get into a little bit more detail here as we go along. Okay, so let's start at the Windows monitoring layer. So we're looking at services, processes, performance counters, memory paging, overutilization of the server, processor overutilization, user counts from a terminal server load standpoint. We're looking at storage thresholds, SQL Server services, files and directories, print queues, scheduled tasks. It goes without saying, your server and network infrastructure is the backbone of your business. Interruptions are costly to productivity and dissatisfaction, and the IT departments are responsible for assuring uptime and performance, and it all starts at this layer. Now, we got to point out that in our years of experience of working with this stuff, a majority of the issues that come across in the world, in the NextGen world here, are really come from this layer. It's all the issues in the Windows layer, even though you do come across things from a NextGen standpoint too, but a majority of the issues begin here and then they affect or impact the NextGen layer. So you got to get this layer right. If you're not doing portions of this already, you need to be doing something like this at that infrastructure layer. All right, hold on a second here. I'm having a technical difficulty. Hold on. All right, just give me 1 second here.
I thought we practiced this.
Is it working now?
Not yet.
Okay. You can't see it now? Oh,
no, try going. There it is. Perfect.
All right, sorry about that, guys. Let me back up the screen here. Okay, so actually I am at the next screen. Sorry about that. Okay,
yep.
Let's get to some of the advanced, no problem. Let's get to some of the advanced monitoring things now. From the NextGen monitors that we've built, let's start with audit health. So we've written a SQL script to look at each of the database instances to see if there's any machines connecting to the databases that are logging messages that aren't logging, or if they're logging messages to the advanced audit database. And then we alert if there's any exception. This tells us if anyone out there is connecting but not configured correctly to write to the audit database. It could be a server or a FAT client. It could be either of those. But this is a HIPAA concern if the auditing is not working properly. So we need to make sure that the configurations are correct on those machines. From a communication services standpoint, that we have scripts that look for a pending ERX message every 5 minutes. We alert if more than 15 messages within the last 2 hours or pending longer than 15 minutes. And this script runs every 5 minutes. And what we're concerned about there is not only portal transactions not coming in, but more importantly, the prescriptions are not going out. So we know this affects patient care if prescriptions are not being processed on a timely basis. So we want to keep an eye on this thing frequently and make sure that stuff is flowing. From a fax monitoring standpoint, we have a script looking for 10 consecutive fax that are still pending or failed in transmission, and then we run this thing every 15 minutes. And the reason faxing is important, I mean, is because some organizations actually use the faxing for their prescriptions or labs or physician referrals if they're using the faxing for that standpoint of it. And if they're not going out, again, patient care is an issue, and if these are not being processed in a timely manner. So this is very important to be watching this as well. HQM monitoring. This script looks at the last recorded HQM result. Any status value other than a 9 return an alert or returns an alert is generated. It's run once a day at 7 a.m. in each of the respective time zones. This is important that your HQM portal will be up to date because you want current information for quality reporting to federal or commercial pay for performance programs. So this is another aspect that we want to make sure we're staying on top of. All right, let's go to the next slide. When it comes to ICS, we have our script written to look at images registered to the database between 1 and 7 days ago, but not uploaded. And that'll generate an alert, and we just look at that once a day. But the reason that's important is because we want to make sure those scans make it to the local warehouse for backup purposes, but also we've also found on occasion these orphaned images sitting out on workstations that haven't been uploaded yet for various reasons, but we find those, and so those are important to make sure we get all those images up to the chart. When it comes to interface monitoring, we have another script that looks for 10 or more orders that have not been processed successfully within the past hour, or any inbound failures in the last hour, and this runs hourly. And so obviously, for obvious reasons, we want to make sure our lab results are going, or if we have bidirectional interfaces, we want to make sure we're getting lab results and the orders are going out, or our HIE information is flowing to the correct exchange. This affects patient care if those interfaces are down. When it comes to OLDP monitoring, we have a script that looks at pending and failed requests, as well as requests no longer pending, but not complete either. So, and that runs every 10 minutes. And the documents are processed for the physicians in a timely manner. It is critical that that happens. So again, it affects patient care and workflow issues if OLDP is not functioning properly. And even though we have advanced monitoring, look at this every 10 minutes, sometimes even our physicians can come in faster than 10 minutes and say, hey, where is my document here? But we're always watching it every 10 minutes at a minimum anyway. From a report health monitoring standpoint, we have a script that looks at the recent updates to the report server. It runs daily, and then we have some weekend exception reporting in there. But basically, we got to make sure that the report server is up to date for reporting purposes. We need to make sure it's constantly getting its feeds from the prod server. Some of the other NextGen monitors, we use the Windows event log to our advantage. So using ngmon, we have generated or created our own certain event IDs to tie to specific NextGen functions. So we created our own 6101 through 03 and 6201 through 12. And I'm not going to go through the whole list here, but I'll just read off some of them to you. Like in the 6100 series there, we're looking at terminal server user counts, scheduled tasks, any file and folder monitoring. Down the 6200 series, we're looking at each one of those scripts that we're running. Each one of them generates their own ID. So all the stuff that I've been covering up to this point is generating IDs so that it drops into the event log so that our lab tech can pick it up and start the alert process or escalation or remediation. And so to this date, we don't know of any conflict of these event IDs being used for anything else, so that's why we reserve them for ourselves. As far as the background business processor, we integrate the BBP's error messaging into our own ticketing system, so that's why it's kind of at the end of our list here. We did not have to generate our own special script for this because it actually does it pretty well on its own with its own built-in monitor, but we do integrate this into our ticketing system, as we hope you've done this to your ticketing system as well if there's any issues with that. If you need help with configuring that notification process, let us know. We can help you do that. From a template cache standpoint, if folks are caching locally, just like you would kind of do with your internet browser or whatever, we want to make sure we're copying that cache over so that you can have that, and we want to make sure we monitor that to make sure those copies are happening successfully. From nightly and weekly SQL jobs, and there's all kinds of various job statuses in there, but things like copy jobs, backups, interfaces, data exports, any of those things that you have, those jobs that you have running in the background, we're looking at all of those. This would be something that we would customize because not every NextGen environment is set up identical, so everybody has their own different interfaces and things like that, and we can certainly help you set up any type of notification from those jobs as we're monitoring those. Pseudo interfaces, those are what we would call like upload or download scripts that you might have, or any FTPs that are special to your environment, or if you're using WinSCP or any of those types of transfers, we want to make sure that you're watching those, and so we'll set up customized scripts to look at those. And then, you know, as I've been kind of talking along here, we can pretty much design, using that PowerShell, we can pretty much design any custom script you need to meet your environment. And then if we have to, we'll generate our own, the event ID so that it can be monitored from software standpoint. So there hasn't been any environment we haven't come across yet that we can't develop a script to monitor that stuff. Okay, so in the actual alerting itself, there's the fundamental foundational notification via email that you can send, or we can escalate those things via email as well. And then, or you can have integration to a support ticketing system for remediation. We have a little offering that we come across occasionally where we come across practices that don't have their own ticketing system, or maybe it's just antiquated, or they're not getting the value out of the current system they have. We have something pretty cool that's tightly integrated with LabTech's monitoring software, and we can actually extend this out to your environment if you'd like. It's just an optional license if you want to purchase the license and have that software extended to your environment, so that way we can, as we generate the alerts, we can create tickets for you, and you can use basically a subset of our ticketing system. And then if you come across something as maybe a tier 2 or tier 3 where you need to escalate it, it's simply a push button and you push it to Itentive, to our ticketing system for higher tiered support. So it is kind of slick how this works, and it's a nice little value add if you want some partnership in your remediation. Okay, so it's some of the custom scripts. You know, we understand. I've said this a couple times already, but we understand that some solutions are not a one-size-fits-all, and that's why it is completely customizable to your practice needs. So we have a whole bunch of these scripts canned up already to do what we need it to do from a NextGen perspective. But we're sure that you have environments out there, whether it be interfaces or things like that, you have stuff out in your environment that you want to monitor and at least send alerts or escalate, maybe even do some auto remediation if possible. You know, we love helping people do that. So anything like that, just understand that this is a customizable solution, even though we start with a group of packaged scripts that you can use under your current environment. Okay, so when it comes to remediation then and or prevention, we have an existing script library, as I mentioned, for the auto remediation, and at a minimum, any service in the NextGen space or even in the Windows space that's set to automatic is going to be auto restarted. If we get alerted that there's a problem with it, or if the system sees that there's a problem with it, it's going to be auto restarted. Which is a nice thing to have in your toolkit there, so you're not having to sit there and manage every single manual alert that comes into the system. But then we can also custom write scripts for that auto remediation as well. One of those things we're working on right now is actually OLDP, where we want to get that thing so tightly automated and stuff. So that's in development right now, as well as some specific interfaces are in our development area right now to make sure we can get those set up for auto restart. But then there's also, you know, manual remediation assistance, whether you want to just you can engage us to help you if you'd like to, or you can, you know, use the licensing as I talked about earlier and escalate it directly to us if you need some help from that standpoint of it. But then there's some other monitoring that goes along with this as well, because we're using the LabTech solution. It does Windows patch management, so it looks at different machines, it looks at servers, it can look at workstations, it can look at and apply any approved patches. If you're familiar with the old WSUS environment here, it's kind of that on steroids in a new world. And so, excuse me, instead of using that solution, we use LabTech to do all the patch management for us and then apply those all automatically. From a reporting standpoint, this software allows us to do quarterly server statistics. If you need any help looking at maybe if you have to increase any resources on your server or look for any constraints. It'll also do health reporting and give you kind of a health check if you need to hand something to your management or you need to do any interrogating of why you're having like a performance issue or something like that. We can use these server statistics as well as health reports to look through your environment to help you with any remediation you have or need. Okay, so why do practices choose to have Itentive do this for them? Well, not every practice has in-depth and knowledge with NextGen under the hood and don't know what to look for or monitor. And we've been around this for a long, long time, so we're very familiar with all the different aspects of NextGen under the hood, so we know exactly what we need to be looking for and monitoring. Another example is NextGen staff love the capabilities of the auto remediation with some of the other custom scripts. So the more we can automate and reduce some of the manual intervention that goes on with this stuff, the better for all of us. And some practices just flat out don't want to deal with it. They have enough other things to worry about, and they don't want to deal with the routine of having to deal with those alerts as they come up. Maybe they're tired of keeping up with the changes in NextGen from a technology perspective. That's one thing we're very good at, and that's mainly because we host it in our data center. We have so many different clients in our data center. We have to maintain all the various different release upgrades and all that stuff, and so we're constantly modifying and changing our monitoring tool and our solution set behind the scenes to make sure it stays current with everything, and some people just don't want to be in that business. They don't want to have to constantly change their own scripts and change their own environment, so they're just like, take it off our plate, you handle this for us. Some just want confidence that someone else is watching this for us too. So not only is there maybe their current IT staff doing it, but hey, if you got a set of tools that we can use, you watch it for us too, and then escalate it to us. And then we'll do tier 1, and if there's any issues, then we'll send it back to you guys, and you can help us with tier 2 and tier 3. The tools they're already custom built, and we're using an industry standard software. This is not some one-off unicorn out there. It is a very good solution, and we can monitor the environment for them, so they just rather stick with something that's already custom built and ready to go. We were the first to host NextGen EPM back in '97, so like I said earlier, we've been around this a real long time, so we've gotten very familiar. We've got a lot of expertise behind this solution. And then keeping your system up and performing is just as important to us as it is for you. So we all want to be able to toot the NextGen horn and say how well the solution works and how well it works for our providers, and we know that issues like performance and things like that is a big concern for everybody, and so if we can all work together as a team and help monitor that stuff and provide the necessary information that you need or we need to help you remediate that stuff, we all win. So it's very important for us to make sure that this stuff is working for you as well. So what's your next step? Well, you can email us or call us. We can work with you to develop any specific scripts for your environment. We just do it on a T&M basis. Or if you want, you can just hand it over to Itentive and say, hey, will you guys just manage this and take us off this plate, take it off our plate. It's very simply priced per server on a monthly basis. We have a promotional thing going on right now for $30 per terminal server and $90 per application server. And you can consider a relationship with Itentive to help you remediate that stuff, either on a time and material basis, or some people like to have a retainer and just have it set aside so they know it's there from a budgeting perspective in case they have to initiate the services from us. And then if you want to do some custom script development, I've mentioned it twice in here, but basically you can do it if you need help with your own stuff, or if you want to use our solution set to get started out of the gate, we can do some custom script development, and it's also just simply on a time and materials basis. So we are here to help, and we want you to be proactively watching your environment. So I'm going to turn it back over to Chelsea, and she can get some questions going for us. Wow, that didn't take long at all. That only took like 25 minutes.
I don't know if anyone's ever told you this, Keith, but you talk really fast.
Do I? Oh, sorry. I'm excited. No, it's good content. It really is. We got some really slick scripts written here.
Okay, so again, anybody can ask questions in the GoToWebinar questions control panel, and if we can't answer any of them today, then we will absolutely get back to you with concrete answers later. So the first question, we don't really have IT people on staff, and we don't really have anyone technical minded. How does this get started, and what do you require from us at the practice?
Well, what we have an initial discovery period, which is let's find out what you've got. Well, actually, there's kind of two ways we can do this. We can install and do discovery as we go, or we can do an initial discovery effort ahead of time and then just reconcile any changes. Because usually what happens is when we go in and they say, okay, I've got 6 terminal servers and 4 application servers, and so we put together, an agreement, and we come in and install the software, and then we do a discovery with the agents. All of a sudden, all other kinds of things start popping up that people forget about. Either a dusty server sitting in the corner that's actually doing a business function, and it's like, yeah, we better watch that, we better monitor that. So it's flexible. It's very flexible in how we get things going. But it's that initial discovery period. We have to figure out what you got to start with to give us a starting point. But just email me and we'll figure that out. That's not a big deal.
Okay, next question. Is there anything that would impact performance in NextGen? So would this?
That's a loaded question. Who said that? Do I know you? So do you mean impact is in?
Like, would there be a negative impact against NextGen?
Oh, by installing the agents? No. These agents are very non-invasive, so they just do real tiny snippets of data. Even we've discovered, even on the ones that we do on 5-minute intervals, it sends such a small snippet of data back to the to our server that does the collection of the alerts for the monitoring. It really doesn't. We haven't seen an impact in bandwidth, nor have we seen an impact in performance on the servers because they're just really small snippets of data. That's a good question. Everybody asks that question. Okay.
Going back to the first question I asked, our Vice President of Technology reached out to me and said, let them know that we can do the full install. They don't need to be IT people. So just throwing that out there. We can come in and do it all for you. You don't need to have the experts. That's what we're here for. So if you have experts, we can work with them too. Next question.
Thank you, Kevin.
How long does it typically take to install your monitoring?
That is a good question. I mean, the initial install and installing agents doesn't take that long. What takes the time is the logistics to get it started. Because you're not going to just open your firewall up and say, hey, come on in and have fun. You're not going to do that. So there's setting up a tunnel between the environments so that we make sure we're sending the information across, or there's access to be put in place. There's really the logistics that takes longer than actually installing the agent and then doing the discovery and see what happens. But then there's also a little bit of time, some analysis time, to determine if there's any specific customizations you need done. Or once we look at the script, the library of scripts that we have to make sure we change the names and the server instances. So there's some setup time. I believe the average, we put out like a 40-hour, no, is it 40? No, it's not that much. Gosh, I can't remember. It's only like a day or two, I think, to, whoops. Why did that bounce back out of there? Why is that doing that? Sorry about that, guys. I don't know why it's, there we go. Okay, so it's, honestly, I don't think it's that long. I think it's a day or two maybe, and that's basically just because we got to change all the server names on the scripts and make sure the scripts are all updated to meet your environment. Maybe a couple of days, but there's actually if this is something you want to move forward and we give you a quote for it, it'll have in there the setup fee to get it going for you. But it doesn't take that long.
Good. Yep. Next question. How is this different than NextGen's WellCare monitoring?
Excellent question. Excellent question. Okay, so first of all, NextGen WellCare monitoring is actually not a bad solution. It really isn't. They offer it for free, but if you look at the specs of what they actually are monitoring, it's mostly, if not all, except for the built-in BBP piece that comes along with the monitoring. That their WellCare looks at that one screen that I had up there that had all the Windows and SQL monitoring that goes on. So they're looking at a lot of the similar aspects that we are from a Windows perspective and from a SQL perspective, but they do not go to the layer and the depth of the NextGen functions of the scripts that we have written. So that is one thing I had to go and look and compare the two and contrast the two to find out, just to make sure that was there some overlap, or was there some things that we're doing that they're not doing, or the other way around? Is there things they're looking at which were really good ideas and that we should be looking at? And actually there was a couple of those too. So anyway, It's a good solution, you know, and they provide it for free, but it is a limited mostly to the Windows layer. That's about the best way I can explain it.
Okay, and it looks like this is, at the moment, our last question, so if you have any, we'll be able to answer them quickly. And otherwise, if you think of them afterwards, you see both Keith's and my contact information up on the screen, so you can shoot us an email or call us. Otherwise, I'll be sending out a follow-up email to this later in the week with a link to the slides and the recording, so you can always just reply back to that email as well if you end up coming up with any questions. So last question, what are some of the most common issues you see and are able to catch before we, as the client, notice them?
Usually, well, okay, if the internet's going to drop, you probably already know it. So by the time we catch it. So, but from the standpoint of from the proactive monitoring, if you recall on one of the slides I had earlier, a majority of the alerts really are coming from the Windows layer. And so, and there's all kinds of things from a runaway task on I'm sorry, not Windows, but well, I guess it is. It's Windows and SQL both. Sometimes somebody has elevated rights to a SQL server and they submit a query, or on the report server, something like that, and it just brings it down to its knees. And so we get the alerts and we can run out there and go, okay, who just did this, or what just happened, and why all of a sudden are we having performance issues? So it's the impact of that change is affecting NextGen, but it's not necessarily NextGen. And so that's a common one as a SQL runaway task. Another thing we're looking at is the number of users that are on terminal servers. So you want to make sure you have a good load balanced terminal server environment, and if you don't, and the terminal servers are either heavily loaded on one way, or they're maxing out on memory, we start looking at those things, or we start looking at user sessions that aren't terminated. They're they're terminated improperly, things like that. So that's tough to say. It could be all over the board, but the more common ones are really going to come from that foundational layer. To make sure that those are done, and then the NextGen stuff is more for workflow and mostly workflow type stuff.
Okay, and it looks like we get another question come in. We are an MSP for the network infrastructure and hardware, but I'm sorry, let me start all over with that. I apologize. We are an MSP for the network infrastructure and hardware for practice, but we only know what we've learned on the fly about NextGen. I'm pretty sure the same is true for the users. Does Itentive provide any training material for getting users' workflow running properly?
That's a great question. So are you talking about so the term workflow I'm using loosely here. Are we talking about system performance that you need help, or are you talking about users that actually using the workflow within NextGen? Maybe that person can bounce back in there and
Steve, I'm going to go ahead and so they're saying users, and
okay.
we absolutely do with our consulting services. Maybe you can expand on it a bit more, Keith, but.
Yeah, so we're talking more from a training perspective then, and training them on the workflow within NextGen from a user perspective.
For the user.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Okay, all right. My mind was thinking IT stuff here. Sorry. So yes, absolutely. We have a consulting services division in here that from implementation consulting can train your users on how to better use workflow within NextGen. And sometimes sometimes that's what people are calling performance. It's not even really the system at all, or the way that the databases are performing, but it's actually performance of the workflow. So yeah, we definitely.
It's funny because the person asking the question said, "Sorry, it's kind of off topic for iCare." So, but they're right there with you. We do have a full we have a whole team of consulting services. So that's exactly what they do. They live and breathe that on-site training, consulting every day.
Yeah, I apologize.
So
you just caught me off guard there for a second. I'm like, what? But yes, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and we have a whole division with best practice workflow and all that, so we can actually reach out to you after this about that, and we'd be happy to tell you more about it.
Yeah, and this audience should probably keep their eyes open for an invitation coming out soon on performance. And because Itentive defines that 3 different ways, not just system performance, but it could be performance of the network, it could be performance of the system itself, or it could be performance in workflow and how physicians operate and how users use the system. And sometimes they say, well, its performance is terrible because it takes me 6 clicks. Well, let's show you how to do it this way, and you can do it in 2 clicks. So that's also termed performance because we're just not using the system to its full potential. And certainly Itentive has the skill set in all those areas to be able to help you guys see this and train you guys how to do it as well. So
yeah,
keep your eyes open because we're going to have more. Yeah, this is what these sessions are intended to be all month long, or educational webinars. So keep your eyes open for that one, because we will be having that one really soon here.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And again, our contact information is up there, so feel free to reach out to us, follow us on social media. We do tech tips every week and NextGen updates and all kinds of stuff. So thanks for attending, and looks like we finished up early today, so enjoy a little bit of extra time in your day. And thanks for joining us.
All right.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Keith.
Mm-hmm.